organizations actually have a training budget, okay? And they pay to train their employees. And some of those organizations, temporary and contract employees, are eligible for training. And if you're unionized. So when I worked at Shirk, and I was on a one-year contract, or I was sort of 2 one-year contracts that ran into each other. So I was there just under 2 years. And in the second position, we knew it was going to end. And I was thinking about other things. And, there wasn't necessarily another option within Shirk. But, at some point, I actually went to my boss. I think I went to HR and asked them about the policy. And the policy was that there is training and that contract people are eligible and, you're unionized, blah, blah, blah. And I went to my boss and I said, I want training. I want to be able to, and I got a training course, So sometimes there are opportunities to learn stuff where your employer is going to pay for it. It might be like a week workshop. It might be, whatever. So that's one of the kind of opportunities to look for when you have those other kinds of jobs. Or when you're doing kind of work with other organizations. There might be ways to get some training that you need. And again, as you go through your career, you're always going to need to do some of those kinds of things, okay? There is stuff now. I mean, I've met people who I'm like, oh, so how did you get in what you're doing? And they're like, oh, I've been like designing websites since I was 12. I'm like, there were no websites when I was 12, right? But there are people my age who do that, okay? I'm going to visit one tomorrow. He lives up the road, right? It's like, there were no websites when he was 12, but he, actually worked on the program for the WordPress, when they changed the code to 3.0, if anybody knows what that is. But like, he writes stuff, he does loads of like really serious website stuff. There were no websites when he was 12. He learned that stuff. Okay? There are jobs now that we could not imagine, that I could not imagine when I was, 15, 20, 25. And there will be jobs in the future that you can't imagine now. So this whole change thing, my other great story is I went for coffee with somebody I hadn't seen for 20 years who was a computer science student when I was first an undergraduate. And we're chatting about things that have happened. And in his story is, well, the first time I got laid off. There's a lot of people in Ottawa that have stories like that, okay? You know how many people Nortel has laid off over the last 15 years, right? Now, he's still employed. But the first time he was laid off, he hadn't updated his resume in 7 years. I'm pretty sure he keeps it updated now. The guy's been employed pretty steadily all the way through, but yes, he's changed companies a few times, okay? So people change jobs all the time. It doesn't mean you're a failure, it doesn't, right? This is just stuff that you do, okay? So the fact is that those paths really look more like this. You're mostly not in the zoomed out Google Maps image view of the paths through your career. You're mostly standing in the woods, okay? You can see the piece of the path in front of you, and you can maybe start poking around in the brush there to see if there is some little overgrown path leading off to the side. And maybe when you get around that corner, there will be an actual fork in the road. There might even be a bloody 4-lane highway, who knows? But the fact is, mostly, you can only see the piece in front of you. And so the really important thing is to think, okay, this is the place I am. And yes, it is leading somewhere, but it might also be just a really nice place to be, right? You can enjoy your PhD. That can be valuable in and of itself, as well as having value as something that leads you somewhere else. But it's a place on your path, okay? And then you're looking for the next place. So the thing to really get out of your head is that you don't need to figure out what you're going to do with your life. Your life will figure itself out. You need to figure out what you're going to do next. And in doing that, you need to think about the kinds of opportunities that might open up, whether that next step is going to be interesting enough that you're going to want to stay there. But the idea that you might change jobs, even if you stay in the same organization, every 3 to 5 years is not really, that's kind of normal. And even if you get that job as a professor, you're going to be, okay, you have to make decisions about, well, which courses do I want to teach? Do I want to take on these kind of, where do I want my research program to go? Do I want to be this kind of researcher? Do I want to start building up relationships and doing more collaborative research? Right? You have to make decisions about what that path looks like. It isn't that you get a job and then you just sit there and your life, right? Your life is the path. So you don't have to work out what you're going to do with your life. You need to work out what you're going to do next, where that might take you, what kinds of opportunities there are on this bit of the path, and keep your eyes out for some of those forks in the road and even, you know, half overgrown paths through the underbrush, which you can then decide to ignore because you're really liking where you are and keeping going down the path you're on. Or you can decide, actually, that looks like it might be an interesting thing. I'm going to kind of go off in that direction. And, you know, you never know, you might end up with pigs. Or you might end up, you know, living in Casablanca. Or you might end up, like, you could be doing anything, right? The possibilities really are numerous. And the question really is, what is it that you're really good at and passionate about? Well, not even passionate, that you just really like doing. And then being curious about where that might take you and really trying to enjoy it. And, you know, to believe that you do have stuff to offer. And there's a lot of ways you can offer that. And anybody who doesn't want to hire you, that's their problem. They've missed out on all your brilliance. And maybe it's because you have a better contribution to make somewhere else.